please join me in welcoming the soulful and wonderful musical duo of Bill Sample and Darlene Cooper.
When your day is done and the darkness comes and life weighs you down and your strength is gone, one thing helps to carry though there's pain in the night and sorrow today, I know that one day there will be joy. Though there's pain in the night and sorrow today, I know that one day there will be joy. Joy.
There will be a better day tomorrow. Though there's pain and sorrow for today, there will be a better day tomorrow. Though there's pain and sorrow for today.
When the day is done and the darkness comes, when life life weighs you down and your strength is gone, one thing helps to carry on.
There will be a better day tomorrow. Though there's pain and sorrow for today, there will be a better day tomorrow. Though there's pain and sorrow for today,
And though there's pain in the night and sorrow today, I know that one day there will be joy. Though there's pain in the night and sorrow today, I know that one day there will be joy. Joy. Joy, 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 joy.
Thank you so much, Bill and Darlene. And that was just an incredible performance. So, so grateful to have you here this morning. And we are in for a good morning. So please join us in welcoming for our meditation and talk today, Reverend Maggie Alderman.
Thank you, Janet. It's so good to be here with you all again. And I will invite you now to begin the process to center and find your place for meditation. So let us begin and taking a deep breath. If you've got anything in your lap, set that aside. I'll invite you to uncross your legs and find your feet flat to the floor. And begin to take slow and deep breaths, exhaling fully. And when you're ready and comfortable, I'll invite you to close your outer eyes. We continue this voluntary willingness to be breathed as a divine being. As we continue to relax into this time and this space, I'll invite you to allow your breath to be your guide, to serve as the power source that brings you closer to the more centered truth and origin of your being. Activated in the spirit, we know and recognize that there is no time and space, that all that is present in the form of activity in our lives, both individually and on the grand scale, is flowing in divine order. This process and this activity needs very little from us. Where we are witnessing chaos, confusion, perhaps even disorientation between what once was and what is now. We have a choice as to where we put our energy, where we place our thoughts. and the activity happens with or without our participation in consciousness. So closing the doors to the outer world one at a time, as you become more still, more quiet, more at peace. Feel the truth and the presence of God. God within us, God all around us, God within each and every one of us. And as we move into a moment of silence, I'll invite you to consider where you're placing your thought energy right here and right now. What is playing out in the circumstances of our lives, in our families, our health, our professions, our relationships. Let us just take stock of all that we're carrying, all that we're invited to participate in. And in stillness, we invite a clear understanding of exactly what is mine to do here. What is mine to do now? So let us take a deep breath and carry that question inward to our inner sanctuary, our inner silence. Knowing that this question is held in divine mind, we know that and affirm that and accept that it is in progress. That as we need to know, more will be revealed. As we need to participate, more will unfold. And so I affirm and activate for each of us here in this space together today the exact process and power of order, recognizing that we embody and encompass all of the divine attributes of the living Christ. We can call on any number of strengths, wisdom, love, power, creativity and imagination, and divine order. Active in this truth, active in this power, I allow for the world to be just as it is, both my inner and outer worlds. I allow for thoughts to come and go. I allow for activity to peak and release. I allow for what is and what will be, knowing that the universe is conspiring at the highest level in our favor at all times, beyond our wildest imagination. We are co-creators with the ultimate creator, with the divine, with the one power and the one presence. Without that connection, we're missing out. So we're grateful for this time together to center, to ground in, to fill ourselves up with the truth of who and what we are and exactly what we're made of, and exactly what we're capable of. We release control, the need to know, the need to be busy, and allow ourselves to simply just be. For when we do that, we open ourselves up to receive the highest and best, to give God room to show off in our lives, impress us beyond our mortal limitations. So we affirm that we're having fun in the process. We're open to all that is. We accept it as good. We accept it as truth. And as you start to draw your attention to your surroundings, bring that with you. Bring that knowing, bring that activity with you into the room, into your body, and allow it to serve as the motivating truth for all that you do the rest of this day and the weeks to come. And in that, we say, thank you, Spirit. Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for being in alignment with my true and highest self. We are so grateful. And so we say, thank you, God. And so it is. And so we let it be. Amen.
So many roads that seem to lead down to the sea. I wonder which road will be the right one for me. Others may fall away, dead-ending left and right. There's this one road that journeys far out of sight. Have you wondered where your road will lead you? Maybe to a bright day of sunshine, or a starry night in heaven. Or it might be you're afraid to go, but you got to follow your road. Oh, you'll never know, never know. We're all but travelers living in a foreign land, trying to find our way as best as we can, looking for an answer, trying to find some love. And though we have journeyed far, it's not quite far enough. Have you wondered where your road will lead you? Maybe to a song that needs singing, or a summer rain. Or it might be you're afraid to go, but you got to follow your road. Oh, you never know. You've got to follow your road. Follow your road. You've got to follow your road. Follow your road. You've got to follow your road. Follow your road. And maybe someday your road will take you far away. You've got to follow your road, follow your road, follow your road. You've got to follow your road, follow your road, follow your road. You've got to follow your road, follow your road, follow your road. And maybe someday your road will take you far away. You've got to follow your road, follow your road, follow your road. You've got to follow your road, follow your road, follow your road. You've got to follow your road, follow your road, follow your road. And maybe someday your road will take you far away, far away.
And to deliver our talk, Don't Touch That Apple, Reverend Maggie Alderman.
Thank you. Hello again, everybody. I am so happy. I knew Janet was going to call me. Janet didn't even tell you this, but you had been on my mind. All of you had been on my mind for about the last month. And when I heard from Janet on Saturday, I woke up and had the thought, I wonder when Janet's going to call me. And I didn't expect it to be exactly in that moment, but hey, we're powerful manifestors and that's the way it goes. So I've been quite busy since the last time I met with you all. I've moved from Texas to Orlando and I'm serving as senior minister at Christ Church Unity in Orlando. So I'm going to get you guys caught up on the talk that I just did a variation of with my community. But before I start, I kind of set the table with a little something funny with my group the other week. And I'm going to share that with you now. I came across a story of these two brothers that were out in the rural sticks somewhere in the country in America. And these two guys were just known for raising Cain everywhere they went. It was vandalism, it was burglary, it was fires and arson, and you name it, they did it. And every time something went wrong in that town, everybody knew who was to blame. Well, time goes by and one of the brothers passed away. So one other brother still living goes to meet with his pastor and he says, you know, we just got to plan this service and I don't know, you know, what to do here, but I do have a request. And the pastor says, all right, hit me with it. And he says, well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you $10,000 if you will call my brother a saint. And the pastor was like, no problem, I can do that. So the day of the funeral comes around and everyone has caught word in this small rural town that the pastor is going to name one of those hellion brothers a saint. So everybody comes out. Everybody wants to be there and witness what's going to be said and what's going to happen. And at the start of the service, the pastor gets up and he straightens out his robes and he says, you know, there's been a lot that I know that some of you have been hurt by in this one individual. And though he is a child of God, we're going to celebrate that. We're going to choose to see him in that light. After all, compared to his brother who's sitting right here in front of me, that man was a saint. Cha-ching. So he got his $10,000 and we found a loophole in semantics. So the title of my talk is Don't Touch That Apple, and it's part of a series that I've been doing called Lost in Translation. I thought it would be a great idea for us to take an opportunity to go back through some of our scripture and in an effort to deepen our understanding of our metaphysical interpretation, or have an understanding of how we can see ourselves in some ancient teachings like our Bible scriptures. Every time we touch the Bible, though, especially in unity, I think we come across an opportunity to recognize that there's the potential for friction. And where there's friction, there's a potential for healing. So I'd like for you to open yourselves up if that's your experience, like, I'm going to log off. I don't want to listen to a Bible story today. But rather be in the experience of deepening your learning, or if you're in the place where you need to hear and listen and facilitate healing, I'll invite you into that space as well. I chose this talk title or this talk subject because I think it's an appropriate time for us to look through the lens of hindsight, which the Bible gives us. We are in the experience of life real time, and we don't have foresight into how things are going to play out. But we do have this rich reference full of metaphor that helps us see that this isn't the first time around the sun. There's nothing, in fact, new under the sun, but that we have a guide to help us develop and withstand the times that we feel maybe hopeless or frustrated or anxious about what's happening in our world. So I, last week, well, it was actually a couple of weeks ago now, I had COVID land right in my household. A house full of vaccinated individuals had an experience where we were exposed to somebody who was also vaccinated and turned up positive with pretty nasty case. And so I was voluntarily put in quarantine in my now tiny house with 2 of my 3 children and 3 animals. You can imagine where my mind was going when I'm the head minister of a large community and find out that I have been exposed to the virus that is running rampant, especially here in Florida. I have not just myself to think of and my family to think of, but I have 200 souls that I come in contact at any given time during the week. And the idea that I could have been a carrier of this virus that could do detrimental damage to someone in a community, someone I love in my community, sent me a little bit on a tailspin. So I luckily had time to myself, and not so luckily, because where I'm not busy, I find myself sitting with my thoughts. And sometimes my thoughts are not as pleasant as other times. I'm going to invite you now to take a listen to an old story out of our origin story of Genesis. And we're going to venture back to the Garden of Eden. This begins in Genesis 2, chapter 2, verse 4, and it goes all the way through to chapter 3, verse 24. So I'm going to give you the Reader's Digest version. Before we start this was after the world had been created, after the waters had been separated, the firmament had been laid, the animals had populated the earth, and God rested. And I joke that God rested on the 7th day, probably because God was tired getting its creation on. But also, because God knew what was coming next, and that was humans. So when we deal with humans, we need to be well rested. Lesson number 1 coming out of this story. So God's rested, and the day has come where he, God, creates Adam out of dust. And he does so and tells him that you will live in the garden, and you will tend to the garden, and you will till the earth, and you will be well cared for. You will have everything that you could possibly need right here in this lovely, divine, provided space. There is trees aplenty, there is fruit to be had and vegetables, and he could have access to any number of those things to nourish his body, except for the tree of knowledge. That was the one warning that God gave Adam, saying, you can eat here, you can drink here, you can be happy and merry, work and be at peace, and don't touch that tree. You cannot eat the apple off that tree. So time goes by, Adam complies, and God witnesses that maybe he's a little lonely. Maybe he didn't anticipate that life in this garden could be scarce, lacking connection of an emotional nature. And so enters Eve. One day, God comes down and he puts Adam into a deep sleep, and he reaches within his body to extract a rib. And out of that is born or created Eve. So together they live in harmony. They're naked, they're walking around the garden. It's perfect temperature outside. It's sunny all the time. They want for nothing. They have each other as companions, and life is good until one day Eve has wandered a little further away from Adam and enters the serpent. So here comes the serpent approaching Eve, and she's like, hey, or he, hey girl, how's it going, Eve? What's going on? And Eve is like, isn't this great, Mr. Serpent? I have no reason to be afraid of you because everything is wonderful here. We have everything we need, and all is well all the time. And the serpent says, yeah, you got everything you need. How about that tree over there? You had a bite of that apple? And she's like, oh no. We can have everything else. So God said that we cannot partake of the apple from that tree. Because if we do, we will die. And in Genesis 3, 4, and 5, the serpent says, you will not die. For God knows that when, not if, when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing of good and evil. So Eve is like, what? I can be like God? All I got to do is do what I've been told not to do, and I can know more and have the power, and I'm going to go for it. So Eve goes and reaches for the apple. She has a bite, and her eyes are opened. And she doesn't stop there. She says, hey, Adam, come here. This is so good. This is such a delicious piece of fruit. You've got to get in on this. And so Adam partakes of the apple, and his eyes are opened. Now, enter angry daddy God. For the sake of this story, we're going to just allow that character to be. And I'm going to offer you, especially those of you who are parents, the type of fury that comes when your children, when you've told them, don't touch the hot stove, and they touch the hot stove. Don't play in traffic, and they go out without looking across the street. It's a panicky type of fear. The fear that it gets ignited from within us because we want to save them from themselves. Make sense? Yes, good. Okay. So enters this angry God, and he is just like, what did you do? Why would you do what I told you not to do? You could have everything. You could do anything, but you could not eat from that tree. And now you have. And so now I curse you. Now I curse you. You will suffer. You will have hard labor in the fields. You will eat bread through the sweat of your own brow. You will experience pain in childbirth. You will experience strife with one another. Depending on your version of the Bible, it literally says that they will bruise each other's heads. They will knock heads together. And you will just be outside, fending for yourself, tilling your own land. So he banishes them out of the eastern gate and sets in place a cherubim and a flaming sword to guard against the garden and the tree of knowledge. So there's the story. Now let's look at it through a metaphysical lens. Some terminology that helps shift our perspective and deepen our understanding of what is richly embedded within this metaphor, this allegory. First of all, Eden comes from the Hebrew word Gan Eden, and Gan is a sphere of activity, so a garden of activity. And Eden or Heden means a period of time, a season, if you will. So a sphere of activity that happens for a period of time. The Garden of Eden is exactly what we anticipate or think it to be. It's pleasant, it's harmonious, it's welcoming, it's a productive state of consciousness where we're connected with the divine and all of our needs are met from a spiritual nature. And it's the place where we go to nurture possibilities from within. Now, Adam is a representation of our evolutionary cycle, the generation of consciousness, the degeneration of consciousness, and the regeneration of consciousness. And Eve, in turn, is a representation of the embodiment of love. Like God is love, and we are love in action. Eve is the mother of love in action. She represents the spirit of God in the creation process and the principal expression of being in alignment with the truth of our nature as human beings expressing the divine. So a little bit of a dual personality held within Eve's role here. Then the rib, people are like, what's up with the rib? I've looked, I've searched, I've asked, and the best I can say is that it's just a metaphor, that there really is not a metaphysical interpretation, but that the location is that is embedded deep within us. It would have to be extracted with extreme precision and purpose, and that reflects our levels of consciousness. So I'm going to go with that. The serpent is our unspirited man that falls into lower consciousness. So when the serpent comes out into the garden, it's a reflection of temptation to take us out of the truth of our knowing that God is all and that we are in alignment with that. It's the physical representation of our consciousness that drops us down into a lower level of consciousness. I didn't say that very well. Let me try again. So we are operating in our physical nature. We're working on our consciousness. We're working to uphold it, to elevate it, to raise it on a regular and daily basis. And through the experience of our humanness, we are challenged at times by this representation of the serpent to dip into a lower frequency. And that might look like going back to an old thought or an old idea or an old pattern that we long since outgrew, but we're invited to visit again. And then the tree of knowledge is that represents, it says good and evil, but it's really the dual level of consciousness. So it is our sense of being spiritual and invited to be an experience of the human nature. So those are the contexts that are offered through the metaphysical interpretation. And I don't know about you, but that always helps me because it's a little far-fetched to believe that something was brought up out of dust and extracted by a rib, and then I'm kicked out of the garden and left to fend for myself. One of the things that I recognized when I was reading this story in microscopic detail is that we falsely believe that once we've been kicked out of the garden, that we can't make our way back. That's not how the scripture is written. What the scripture actually says is that there was a cherubim and a flaming sword placed at the gate. So a cherubim is a hodgepodge, a mishmash of two creatures. Picture an eagle and a lion, something that is distorted and doesn't go together, doesn't flow together, and might look quite gnarly. The flaming sword is exactly that. So we're going to come back to those in just a little bit. It occurred to me that the universe is maybe playing on an experimental level. Like, just bear with me for 1 second. God is all, right? God can and does do and create and manifest itself through anything. Therefore, nothing is a mistake. And we are always in the process of evolving ourselves. Well, if we're a product of the divine, then wouldn't it make sense that the divine is also learning about itself through us? We are creating this two-way information highway. The creator of all makes all things possible. We have choices and decisions to make. We accept our good, we surrender to all that is, and we move on and evolve. Well, we evolved, so we inform the divine, and then we get our next new set of life circumstances. That sounds a whole lot like tilling. I love to garden. I hate to prepare the earth, y'all. I really do. I don't like to till. I don't like the smell of manure. I don't like to get dirt under my fingernails. I don't like to drag the stuff to the back of the yard and do all of that labor. It would be so much easier if there was a garden that had at least been prepared for me. And I realized that this is kind of a metaphor, right? This is a metaphor for how we are born and given the opportunity to operate within the truth of our nature, in that all is well and everything is always provided. However, we are also in our human bodies. We aren't in a numb cylinder just walking around. We have nerves, we have senses, we have taste buds. We enjoy the pleasures of being a human being, and a part of having taste buds and nerve endings and pleasures of this vehicle also comes with it thoughts and emotions. So let's go back to the tree of knowledge. I recognized that the tree produces the apple. The apple is beautiful and it is tempting and it looks so juicy, and it is just ever so mildly entertaining. When I was sitting in COVID quarantine a couple of weeks ago, I said that I was alone with my thoughts. I was alone with either the ability to get myself into the garden space and be in the flow of what is, and to recognize that this was a universal invitation for Maggie to take a time out, which I hadn't had in quite some time. And it was also an invitation for me to sit with some of those worrying thoughts, for me to take a journey backwards into where I had picked up old messages, where I had developed old beliefs or thought patterns that were no longer serving me. So some of my apples looked like fear. I don't know if that's in reverse for you all, but that says fear. This is my beautiful green apple. And so I looked at fear on the tree, and it sat there taunting me for a couple of days. I wish it was it was probably like an hour. And then I was like, fine, I'm going to have fear. And I took a bite out of it. In the process of taking the idea on the tree into my being, a bite of, digested through, I got kicked out of the garden. I was all of a sudden tumbling. It felt like I was just in space. It felt like every idea that could possibly go wrong, that could be the catastrophe of catastrophes, was coming to the surface for me. After I was kicked out of the garden and after I had had my go with fear, then I got into blame. Blame was, I'm upset. I'm upset that I'm stuck here. I'm upset that people haven't been self-accountable, which they have, but I'm laying my judgment on it. I'm upset and I want to blame someone for the fact that I can't do my job, someone for the fact that I'm stuck here with nothing but my own thoughts, someone for the fact that my community was at risk, my own life was at risk, my kids' life was at risk. Someone had to be blamed here, but I'm still outside of Eden. Oh, I lost another one. Then I started I know better. I know better than to be in fear. I know better than to be in blame or worry or doubt or lack or any of those fun journeys that I went on for the 10 days that I was stuck in quarantine. And then I started this one. When I thought I'd had my fill of apples, I went back to the tree and I took shame down for a little bite. And then shame was, how could I possibly be experiencing this? How could I be a truth student? Heck, how can I be a minister? How do I talk to people and tell them that everything is in divine order and all is well and this is all a part of the grand plan when I'm sitting here in my most lower level vibration? I'm sitting here in doubt. I'm sitting here in fear and in worry. And then it produced and brought up feelings of shame for me. So I looked up, let's see, where am I? So I realizing that I am the one that is fueling this. I also am the one who has the ability to stop it, So I found that there's a definition of evil that is provided by Charles Fillmore, Unity's co-founder. And he says this about evil: it is a parasite. No permanent life of itself its whole existence depends on the life it borrows from its parent. When the connection is severed, nothing remains. So I'm going to say that again. It is a parasite. No permanent life of itself, its whole existence depends on the life it borrows from its parent. When the connection is severed, nothing remains. Like, wow, it puts us right back to our principles. It puts us right back into knowing that our thoughts create the experience of our reality. And if that's true, then I can get back to the garden. I may have to face the cherubim, which is a distorted view of the animal kingdom, but of us, right? When we are operating at a low level, when we have taken on old thoughts or old opinions or old patterns that may have felt good and served us at a time in our life that is no longer true, we become contorted. We become a distortion of our current self, much less our higher self. Isn't that true? And so this cherubim is here as a representation of how we can get ourselves all gnarled up. And there is the key to getting back to the garden. The flaming sword is right there. It's intimidating. It looks scary. It looks like it's going to burn us. But if we have the gumption, the ability to stop our thought process, to turn ourselves around on that road and to go back to face our thoughts, then we also have the ability to pick up the sword and knock them down and find our way back to Eden. So my questions for you today, or my wish for you today, is that we put down the apple, that it can be beautiful, it can be inviting, it can look intoxicating and exotic and just like the thing we need to ease the discomfort of where we are in our beingness. But we grab it and we eat it and we start the journey all over again, instead of evolving consciously, placing our energy into where we want to be and where we intend to manifest ourselves. So if we can put that down, we have to recognize that it's happening and then do a radical exercise of self-acceptance. So we don't get stuck outside the garden gate playing the blame and the shame game. But remember that we can come back anytime, any day. We have the ability to stop chasing old negative thoughts and start creating the reality we choose to experience. Finally, the expectation is that we're on the right side of the dirt. We're still living, we're still breathing, we're still walking around. And we were placed in the garden with the choice as to whether or not we want to experience the journey outside the garden gate. It will happen again. We will be tempted again. We will be challenged. We're challenged every day, just in the news media, but we're challenged in our lives and with our families. And each time we come back, we are a little older, we are a little wiser, we have developed and evolved in a little higher vibration, and the apple still looks really good. I'm alive, so I know I'm going to eat it. Namaste.
Life as you knew it has fallen apart, and you've been left with a wounded heart. You feel so lost, don't know where to start, but love will show the way. You look for reasons and someone to blame, but that just leads to more hurt and shame. Forgiveness lights a healing flame if we let love show the way. Everything has changed, but love remains the same. If we let love show the way, if we let love show the way, if we let love show the way, we can all heal one day. There is no way to change the past. Love will help us move forward at last. If we let go, don't move too fast, and let love show the way. No one can live life perfectly. We make mistakes almost every day. We all need grace, come what may, to let love show the way. Everything has changed, but love remains the same. If we let love show the way, if we let love show the way, if we let love show slipped off our pedestal. No one can stay there, we all fall. We hope our imperfections help you know that you don't have to get up on that pedestal. If we let love show the way, 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 we can all heal one day. One day, all heal one day. Let love show the way.
Thank you so much, Darlene and Bill, and thank you, Maggie, for that extraordinary message and metaphysical way of looking at life. So thank you.